Hello, and welcome to Before You Fly, Check the Map, Episode 3. I am Rebekah Cooley, Aloft Content Marketing Manager. I'm also a fellow FAA certified Part 107 remote pilot since 2017 with expertise in automatic flight planning and aerial photogrammetry using UAS technologies, as well as being the Content Marketing Manager here at Aloft. I am a proud member of the Women in Drones organization, a brand ambassador for Women Who Drone, and an FAA safety team representative in the Seattle area. For today's episode, we will be discussing regulations around drone operations in national, state, and local parks, as well as demoing how different types of parks appear on the map on the Before You Fly platform. I'm honored today to be joined by our guest host, Rebekah Waters, Senior Communications Specialist at the FAA's UAS Integrations Office. A bit of background on Rebekah. She joined the agency 10 years ago as a contractor and became a federal employee in 2015. Rebekah joined the UAS Integrations Office in October of 2017 and has been a program management analyst. And Rebekah will be sharing our presentation on national, state, and local parks here, and then followed by a live demo.
Hi, I'm Rebekah Waters, and I work in the UAS Integration Office at the FAA. Today I'm going to talk to you about drone operations near and in parks. Let's talk about the way the FAA and other entities regulate drone regulations. If you've ever seen a no drone sign, you might have some questions. The FAA exclusively regulates and controls the airspace. There can be land use restrictions that affect the way you can take off or land your drone. While only the FAA can restrict airspace, we recognize that drone safety is a partnership with local, state, tribal, and territorial government entities. These entities may restrict land use, such as takeoffs or landings. We developed a sign that the government entities can use for their specific needs and locations. These signs should cite specific statutes or local regulations or policies that apply. These signs are not for private landowners about the negative impact that drones can have on the safety of visitors, staff, and wildlife. The National Park Service has restricted drone takeoffs and landings in all but a few national parks. The Code of Federal Regulations, 36 CFR Section 1.5, the National Park Service has the authority to close all or portions of park area to specific use or activity and may impose conditions or restrictions on use or activity. In June of 2014, the National Park Service released Policy Memorandum 14-05, which directs all regional directors and superintendents use this authority to close off units of the National Park System, launching, landing, or operating drones. How did this policy come about? Well, small drones have crashed into geysers in Yellowstone, attempted to land on Mount Rushmore, and they've even been lost over the edge of the Grand Canyon. Drone use was resulting in park visitors, safety concerns for visitors, and in one case, park wildlife was harassed by a drone. Policy allows the National Park Service to protect our national treasures when we visit them. Since protecting our national treasures is so important, park rangers have the authority to take action and enforce restriction of drone use. They have the discretion to look at potential violations on a case-by-case basis. Violations of the ban is a misdemeanor with the maximum penalty of 6 months in jail, $5,000 in. A national forest is a large expanse of forest that is owned, maintained, and preserved by the federal government. National forests use minimal regulations to keep the environment in a good wilderness areas are areas of land that have been largely preserved by modern human development. Wilderness areas require rules to maintain an untouched condition. The National Wilderness Preservation System of the United States protects federally mandated wilderness areas that have been designated for preservation in their natural condition. Takeoffs and landings are prohibited. As I said before, the FAA exclusively regulates the airspace for the purposes of aircraft safety and efficiency. There are state and local land use restrictions that might affect where you can and cannot take off and land. We encourage you to use the Before You Fly app to learn about airspace and other restrictions when you want to fly. You can also check out the Know Before You Fly website to learn more about how to fly your drone safely and responsibly. If you see a local, state, or federal restriction that is not listed in the Before You Fly app, encourage your local authorities or CBO to submit this information through the Before You Fly app. Another good way to learn more about flying your drone safely and in compliance with your local and state regulations is to find a community-based organization, or CBO, like an Academy of Model Aeronautics Club. A CBO is also a great way to meet and connect with other recreational drone pilots in your area. Why drone alone when you can fly with a friend? I want to take a minute to thank you for attending this webinar today. When recreational flyers take time to learn about state, local, and federal regulations and guidance, it helps us keep our national airspace system the safest and most efficient airspace system in the world. Here are a few more things you can do to help us with this. 1. Make sure you registered your drone. You can do this by going to the FAA's Drone Zone. It's $5 to register, so if someone charges you more, probably not at the FAA's Drone Zone. 2. Take the recreational UAS safety test, also known as. The FAA has approved a number of providers to administer this test. You can find a list of providers at faa.gov/UAS/recreational-flyers/knowledge test updates, or by Googling FAA Trust. This test is always free. 3. Learn about NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, a confidential, voluntary, non-punitive system that is collecting important data that may help us enable more drone operations. Anyone involved in a UAS operation file a report to describe close calls, hazards, violations, and safety-related incidents. When an operator files a report with this system, the FAA views this as an attitude of compliance. It can work in your favor if enforcement actions were ever considered. The information you provide is confidential, and if you aren't sure if you should file a report or not, just remember this. When in doubt, fill it out. So remember, the FAA regulates the airspace. There may be other restrictions that affect where you can safely and responsibly fly your drone. I encourage you to always do your pre-flight planning and check before you fly prior to takeoff. I'd like to say thanks to Aloft for inviting me here to talk with you today about this. Lastly, fly safe and have fun.
Well, thank you, Rebekah, for that wonderful presentation and just laying the foundation of our understanding national parks, state parks, and local parks, and the regulations that there are for drone operations there. Now I am going to share my screen and give a live demo of the Before You Fly platform, and we'll look at some national parks, state parks, and local parks to just see how those look on the map so you can orient yourself when you're doing your pre-flight checklist. Here I have pulled up the Before You Fly mobile app on iOS as well as the desktop version. So this will just show what they look like depending on what platform you're on. So I already have on desktop the Golden Gate Park area, but we'll pull that up here on mobile. And this is a really interesting area to look at because as an initiative that Aloft did with the city of San Francisco, we actually have local park ordinance in the app for all of the San Francisco area. They do have regulations in San Francisco against drone takeoff and landing in local parks. So this one gives an interesting kind of look at that. So you can see here, everything in red is actually the Golden Gate National Recreational Area. So you can see here on desktop a little bit, you can see that Alcatraz is actually included in that, as well as some of the Golden Gate area. But also here in the Golden Gate Park, if we scroll up, you'll see this advisory bar on the bottom. That is an ordinance that's from the actual local parks. So it says San Francisco has rules against operating drones in local parks. Takeoff and landings are restricted. So this is a good example of a local park that is not in a national parks area specifically, but there is local ordinance against it. And then if we click up here into this red area, the red area always indicates a restricted area for drone operations. And here we can see there is a red advisory bar that says restricted operations, and then that first advisory will be the Golden Gate National Recreational Area. So the note there is that national parks have been classified as a no, give it a little load time, have been classified as a no drone zone after 2014, as Rebekah mentioned. And flying here means stiff fines and potential penalties. So anywhere that you see red is indicated as a restricted area on the map. Areas that are yellow will be caution. We can kind of go around here on the map. We can come down here into the, you can see here that we're still in a part of the Golden Gate National Recreational Area. As we kind of move down through the map, you can see that extending through here. Yeah, and so state parks may not necessarily show up as a red prohibited area on the Before You Fly app, but it's always a best practice to check the exact park that you want to use the website for it. So the state website, typically if you type in the name of the park, will have information. For example, when you are operating commercially, if you're using any of the footage for commercial purposes, this could require a permit. So, and sometimes in recreational circumstances, it also may require a permit. So it is always good to check the state websites to see if there are any regulations and local ordinance that you need to follow in order to operate in those parks. So now that we've taken a look here on the Before You Fly app, I will move over to opening up for our live Q&A. So one of our first questions, we had a few of our listeners who submitted questions beforehand. Thank you for those. So I'm going to open up with our first question, and I'll pitch it over to Rebekah, is what are simple rules to fly by? What would you consider the basics to always confirm before taking off a drone?
Thanks, Erica. Well, if you're flying recreationally, it's important that you are flying for recreational purposes only, enjoyment, and that you follow the safety guidelines of an FAA-recognized community-based organization, a CBO. And when you have any doubt, please check out faa.gov/UAS, and we have everything listed there as far as, keeping your drone within visual line of sight, staying under 400 feet, staying in certain airspace, checking that you're not near an airport, things like that.
The next question, I'll take this one, is actually about the San Francisco area. So the question came from Linda Miner, and it says, I have been told by several East Bay Park District officials in the San Francisco Bay Area that drones are not allowed in East Bay parks. Is this true, or anywhere close by? So this would be accurate based off of local ordinance for the city of San Francisco. They do have takeoff and landing restrictions. So it's just good to understand that you have to take your drone off from the ground, obviously. So the airspace is not necessarily controlled, but taking off from a park would be prohibited in the East Bay area. And this is also something good to point out. We did receive a few questions of ways to potentially work around trying to take off in a national park from a boat, from the water, or from, just outside to flying over. Think about that as kind of going around the rules. You still would be, violating the prohibited area of flying in a national park if you did take off outside. That airspace is protected for wildlife and other reasons. So just be mindful of that. If it feels like it's a workaround, it's probably also violating the regulation there.
Erica, before you go on, I'd like to add, that's a really good point. Try to follow the spirit of the rule and consider why the rule was put into place. We want to make sure that we are good neighbors and that we give the recreational drone flyers reputation a good name. We don't want to set anything back for our for drones in general. And I was just told today about a drone crashing into a wildlife area, the Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve in Huntington Beach. And when this drone crashed, these wild terns, they took off and they abandoned hundreds of eggs in the nest and never came back, and they were all lost. And it got a lot of bad press. And, it's something that if we want to keep moving forward with this, we want to make sure that we're good neighbors and we don't do anything that would cause people to try to keep us from going forward with drone regulations the way we want to.
Thank you. I really appreciate adding that specific use case. That really, speaks to why the regulations are there, and just, preserving the experience of a national park and why we all love them and want to keep enjoying them. So great. The next question, there was a question from Daniel Johnson about does the B4UFLY app and potentially the Aloft platform as well show TFRs? So yes, it does. We do show active TFRs, and those are always really important to check, especially if you're in uncontrolled airspace. Let's say that you had received authorization, maybe a permit to fly in a local park, but maybe there was a TFR that had been put in place. So it's always important, even if you've, thought you dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's, to just check right before takeoff. And I actually would like to I'm going to share just one more time a feature that we released this past summer called Notify and Fly on the B4UFLY platform. And that's a really great way of sharing in uncontrolled airspace your location as a drone operator to let other drone operators in the area know that you're there. All right. So do it here on the mobile app. You also can do this on desktop just for reference, but you'll want to make sure you're clicked out of controlled airspace. You need to be in uncontrolled airspace, excuse me. So you can see these blue circles here indicate the controlled airspace surrounding the area that I'm in. We have a green, clear for takeoff. We can see there's no active advisories. And then this blue icon here in the right-hand corner with the arrow through the box is our Notify and Fly icon. So here you can see this kind of gives some of the information that I just overviewed on what Notify and Fly is. To indicate 2 notes, this is fully anonymous, so you do not have to share any of your personal information. It's purely just adding to the airspace awareness for the area. This also is not a replacement for LANCE or getting an authorization through the FAA drone zone to fly in controlled airspace or potentially to fly higher than the 400 feet. You still must comply with all of the FAA regulations for operations in uncontrolled airspace, even if you use a Notify and Fly. So we'll click Next. Here, it'll give us some options. You can submit for a recreational, commercial, government, or first responder. recreational and commercial are pretty self-explanatory, but government and first responder are really interesting use cases of if there's important, potentially life-saving work that's being done in the area that needs maybe recreational and commercial drone pilots to give right of way. You could submit, if you are one of those agencies, through the Notify and Fly feature to bring more situational awareness of the operations you guys are doing there. So today we'll just do a recreational file flight. Right now, the basics of the information are preset for a 60-minute duration and up to a 400-foot ceiling. We are working on future iterations that will give a little more customizable options. But for now, if you were to go over that 60-minute period, we would just recommend you submit a second one, and then we'll click File Flight. And this is live in real time. So if you're on the B4UFLY app, you can look in this the playing field area, and you can see this blue circle indicates that our Notify and Fly has been submitted, and now this advisory bar shows a caution, and then this drone flight area, which shows the information that we just submitted. So this is a great tool if you are, going to operate potentially in a park that you received authorization for, that you could submit a Notify and Fly to just add increased awareness for potentially other drone pilots who might also be flying in that park. The next question I wanted to share was, and I'll pitch this one to Rebekah. This one kind of overlaps with what we've already addressed, but if my location is outside of a park, can I fly over park property as long as I don't return back to my takeoff location outside of the park property? I realize we kind of covered this one, Rebekah, but if there's anything additional you'd like to add.
So technically, yes, but again, be a good neighbor. Think about why the prohibition exists, and don't ruin the party for everyone by harassing park visitors or wildlife or causing a safety issue or concern or even a crash. It's just a good idea to really err on the side of caution and find a place where you can fly without any problem at all.
Awesome. Yeah. And I wanted to reference in the chat, I put links to 2 different blogs that we've written on Aloft's website. They give a lot of information and links about how to search a state park's website, how to find more information that is maybe more specific to the area that you're looking at. And there's also details in there about national forest areas and wilderness areas, and really understanding those nuances between those. In the Q&A box, received a few questions from Alex Green, and I wanted, to address those. So his first question was, if you're flying in an uncontrolled airspace, you don't need a LANC authorization, right? And yes, you're correct. You just initiated a Notify and Fly from Aloft, is that correct? Actually, Notify and Flies are only submitted through the B4UFLY platform, so the app or the desktop version. A Notify and Fly is for only in uncontrolled airspace, and this is voluntary. It's not a required action. It's just something that can add additional airspace awareness for other pilots who might be in the same area as you, and a good, just step to add to your flight checklist of, being an active part of the national airspace system. So thank you for that question. And there was an interesting question that came through from John Melville, and the question is, can we add state and county correctional institutes into B4UFLY? This is a really great question, and the Aloft team is continually innovating to increase the accuracy of airspace advisories on both the B4UFLY platform and the Aloft platform. We recognize that not every airspace that has restrictions is currently included, and I would encourage you to keep an eye out in the coming months for some exciting new tools that we have in the works of developing to continually adding missing airspace advisories to the map.
And I would add to that, it's very helpful to Aloft and the FAA if you can encourage your local government to submit this information through the Before You Fly app. And they can work with the FAA and Aloft to get the facilities added that they feel are important to have in the app as having takeoff and landing restrictions.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. I'll feel like I keep flipping back to sharing my screen, but it's fun to be able to see it in the app as well. That here in the Before You Fly app, I'll show what Rebekah was referencing of how you could submit data. So let's say they're currently, other than our Notify and Fly that we just submitted, there's currently no airspace advisories in this specific area that we're in. You can scroll up, so show the advisory bar, and see this text that says something missing. You could click the submit data for this location, and this will take you to our data submission form. And you, it's not required, you don't have to put your name and email, but you can give some basic information about the advisory that you are looking to submit, and that will come in right to Aloft and into everyone at the FAA, and we will receive that information and start processing it. So this is a really great tool. We launched this a few years ago, and it has been really well received. I think we have received a few thousand submissions, and actually a lot referencing parks. People are very interested, especially park representatives and government entities, in making the app as accurate as possible for people who are looking for that information there. There also is a feature that if we were in an area that did have some advisories, so here there are a few, you can click on the little blue question mark in a circle, and that will, and then click flag for review, and that will allow you to flag an existing review that may need some updates to it to be more accurate. So thank you, thank you, Rebekah, for referencing that so I could give a little demo of what that looks like. And I think we should have time, maybe one or two more questions. Looking here in the chat, see any new ones that came in. Okay, maybe I'll pitch this one over to you, Rebekah. This one's from Scott Gal, if I'm saying his last name correctly. I live near a state park. In the park is a sign that says no drone zone. However, there is no restrictions in the Before You Fly app for flight in the airspace above this park. What authority does the state park use to restrict flight in the airspace above the park if it's not restricted by the federal government?
Well, this is the land use restriction that I mentioned in the video. So you are restricted from taking off or landing. When you see that sign, it should have the actual statute added to the sign that we provided for that park. And you can get more information about that by talking to your local park authority.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you for that question, Scott. It's a good one, yeah. Well, I think with that, we might wrap up our Q&A. We received so many good questions, and I did want to reference that this whole session is being recorded and will be shared via email to everyone following if you'd like to watch any of it back. And also links in that email will be to two blogs that I referenced that give kind of more details and information about how you can gain more information about national, state, and local parks ordinance. And I thank you so much, Rebekah, for your time and for everyone who joined today.
Thanks for having me here today. I just wanted to, one more time, when you want to know more about this, please go to faa.gov/UAS. Don't forget to take the trust that I mentioned in the video if you haven't yet. It's free. Register your drones in our drone zone. $5. If anyone charges you more, that's not where you should be. Make sure you get to our website. And thanks for this opportunity to come and speak today, Erica.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. See you next time.